Yeah, I just want to welcome you again, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for this very important part of our work, being our future. I am, as Maria said, the Youth Engagement Coordinator at Penn International. I've been at Penn International for over 5 years now. And perhaps it's important to mention that because Penn hired me as a fellow just over 5 years ago, I've now been able to get integrated to its network. And over time of doing casework, of doing 2 terms of a fellowship, then becoming Turkey consultant, which is where I'm from, and focusing on the country, step by step, I was able to contribute back to Penn and to basically integrate my own ideas of what I think people our age might need. And so perhaps this serves as a good example for you to think about other young writers who may be around you right now, being aged 18, 19, I'm 25 currently. So even at a younger age, even at 20 or 19, if you start engaging them, if you start giving them an opportunity to become fellows, to work with you side by side, it's a beneficiary for your own future, for they might then take on more responsibility, they might bring on new ideas and innovative ideas to your centers, and then eventually also help with building programs such as the ones that we will be discussing today. And I've prepared a presentation for you to run through step by step what we have imagined to hopefully encourage you to engage in more audiences and young writers. Penn has an aging membership issue, much like other institutions as well. There's a lack of youth representation. So hopefully some of the ideas that we will discuss today might remedy or give ideas of how to remedy this situation.
Okay.
The first thing is that I thought about mentioning, and I've learned this from English Penn's Hannah Treverton recently, that youth engagement efforts are actually at the very roots of Penn's foundations, and it predates Penn International. I thought this was very interesting. In the spring of 1917, Catherine Amy Dawson Scott, who founded Penn International, started the Tomorrow Club. It's a predecessor to the later International Pen Club. The name indicated the aim of the club: to draw the writers of tomorrow, the literary youth, and connect them with the established writers for the purpose of exchanging ideas, advice, and comments. Dawson Scott would sometimes invite the literary agents and editors she knew to attend the club dinners while encouraging the young writers to seize the opportunity of meeting them. Penn International would only follow 4 years later, more than likely based on the preliminary groundwork of Tomorrow Club, which is also very telling. In order to highlight the significance of youth engagement, in the first part, I will detail 2 recent ways we have approached this youth engagement issue, and we will leave time for you to ask any questions you might have after each one. We will also hear from our founding center, English Penn's efforts to engage the youth within their own centers, and you will also get a chance to ask questions there. And in the second part of the webinar, we will hold a discussion and workshop all together to think about how youth engagement efforts can be strengthened across the board within Penn's networks. Yes, so it's I wanted to first detail why youth engagement matters. Of course, there's a lot of reasons, but I try to detail them in 3 categories. For Penn, it matters because it remedies the problem of an aging membership. It ensures youth representation and decisions and actions for the next 100 years. It secures future sustainability of Penn and its networks. It keeps up to date with and utilizes current trends in literature and human rights campaigning, as we will see some examples of later. And it aids and expands the power of literature to bring young communities together in a time besieged by divisive trends. For literature, it's also important because aiding the early and often most challenging stages of a writer's development is very important, because so then they might have the inspiration to pursue their aspirations and contribute to literature and thereby their communities through writing. It helps to adapt to and make space for changing forms of literature, such as video poems and the like, and making space for them within Penn's body is also very important, as much as it's important for literature to have avenues where these new innovative forms can be created. And for free expression, it ensures the voice of the youth to be represented fairly within the flow of information locally and globally. It makes space for the youth to meet beyond their differences of opinion, of economic, political, or ideological boundaries, and interact with and appreciate each other's insights into experiences and emotions across the aisle. And we'll see an example of how this worked out as well. So these were the sorts of ideas I had in mind when I set out to create our Young Writers Network in Turkey called İlkyaz, which is our first case study. It was started 3 years ago. At the time, Turkey was going through a heavy crackdown. It still is, but just following the coup attempt, which happened in 2015, and it got increasingly worse. The crackdown made the number of arrested writers in the country jump from 22 to over 150, which was intense. It made Turkey the biggest jailer of journalists in the world. Countless newspapers, radios, publishing houses were shuttered. Even entire editorial boards of newspapers from oppositional newspapers were arrested, nearly all charged with terrorism charges. And Turkish society was already highly politically charged before the coup attempt, and the crackdown that followed was only a fuel to that fire. In this context, free expression was severely curtailed. Even my peers got arrested and prosecuted for tweets, Facebook shares, and the like. Divisions between ideological camps got deeper. And I personally felt as if everything had become partisan, that there was just no space for us to communicate with people from opposing points of view, since reality had become so distorted and the overwhelmingly government-controlled media spread misinformation and distorted reality with all of their capacity. So that's why I started making plans to set up a young literature network in Turkey. I knew in a sense that the world of literature was defiant and that young writers my age must be resorting to their imaginations to express themselves creatively and pave themselves a way over the desperation and bitter division they experience in their daily lives. And I kind of wondered, if we can't speak on newspapers, if we can't speak on the street even about our opinions, then I wonder how we're feeling. And I wanted to know how young writers are expressing these feelings in this intense context. So if we go into what İlkyaz is, İlkyaz means early spring in Turkish. İlk is early and yaz, early spring. But it also implies first writing, because yaz also means writing. So just like Amy Dawson Scott, it was first imagined as a place for established writers and not so established ones to be inspired by each other's work and amplify their voices together. It's a web-based literary platform built to form a community for and support young Turkish literature writers under 35 and showcase their works locally and globally. So our focus is young literature, but our job is exchange. In order to address how it was founded through the support of the civil society program and partnership with PEN Turkey and PEN Norway. It was able to begin with around £10,000. We were working towards the future of our local center, so to improve PEN Turkey and to kind of address the need to have more younger members engage in the center, in the future also to take more active part, perhaps first to introduce them to. And then the literary industry in Turkey was also in our minds, whereby youth representation was so low and the high-nosed world of literature, often publishing, often ignored them. So we wanted to make space for them too. We're essentially a team of 5 now, but we started up as a team of 4 people. And this allowed us to have the funds for the project be funneled to young writers and the project itself, rather than as pay to our organizing team. We had 2 advisory board members, which worked only on the submissions that we got. And they were helping us vote on them and to select them. And then aside from that, we were 1 overall manager and 1 coordinator, being myself. And just recently, we've added a social media manager because we have grown a certain extent in the last 2 years. It was important to also revitalize the PEN Turkey Center. And so some of the work that we did, hopefully in the future, can lay the groundwork for PEN Turkey to get younger as well. And the most important thing, perhaps, as I mentioned, Turkey was going through an intense censorship period. So we had a strict publishing policy for non-political and fictional writing to overcome the barriers of censorship, but also to make a welcoming space for free expression for youths of all backgrounds across the spectrum. And despite such heightened political tensions, people from all backgrounds did come together to form this community based on a sense of common intrigue and pride in young literature. So this almost superseded the ideological boundaries that they were experiencing. Young literature was something we could all take pride in, and a good poem was a good poem. There was no right or left wing of it, that people could take common pride in it. And approaching our second year, İlkyaz has actually enabled this experience that inspired a sense of togetherness. And the fact that it has been able to do so, and the fact that we have allowed people, or people joined us from right-wing backgrounds, religious backgrounds, secular backgrounds, is actually warrants attention that in the most oppressive context for free expression in the world, we have done this without being targeted by pro-government media or social media trolls, which is really unique because almost everything gets attacked by the pro-government media, almost everything gets targeted in the free expression field. And yet literature and fictional writing, especially young writing, has spared this attack. And especially when other channels of communication can be stifled, this is so important for us to have a channel to communicate with each other that's devoid of this intense division in the country. Now I'd like to get into how we support our young writers. There's different ways in which we try to do this. One of them is that we give them representation, a sense of establishment, perhaps, or legitimacy in the early stages of their careers, because this is so much needed. I mean, I'm also a young writer and I struggle to prove myself that I am a young writer, to be honest. I mean, you have to send your writing to a lot of places, and a lot of the times you don't get a response back. And this maybe leads you to feel ever more doubtful of your own talent. So it's so important to have a publishing opportunity to make you cling on to the belief that you can be a writer and you're on your path to be a writer. We also provide this honorarium writing for our young writers. This is important also because a lot of the magazines and fanzines and online websites in Turkey are not able to pay young writers. And even if it's not a lot, we pay just £50 per piece. This, I think, provides a sense that they could, in the future, make some money from writing, but also that it's their efforts that gets praised more than just being published on our website. And we do get audiences thanks to their writing, so it's just fairness after all. And especially during COVID circumstances, and with the Turkish lira also sadly going down, this perhaps is also another way to support our young writers. And perhaps most importantly, after that, it's that a community is established for them to feel like they're a part of, and for them to meet like-minded young writers, so that they might read other people's approaches to describing the current context they're living through, and to learn from them, to get inspired from them. And for example, if you're a writer who just wrote his first piece and you don't necessarily know how to carry on, you might also see a writer who's just published a book or a couple of books on İlkyaz. And that way you can see how they approach it and you can be in contact with them. So in a way, just like Catherine A. Meadows and Scott imagined, these established names are inspiring not so established names within the network. And another way that we provide support is as translation. We translate all the writings on our website, aside from our shortlist section, to English as the İlkyaz team. And we introduce them to readers outside of Turkey. So if you go on our website, there will be an English option on the bottom, on the top, and then you can see from there all the writings in English. This exchange creates new audiences for our young writers in the world arena and introduces them to a global network of the world's literary figures and their peers through PEN International's network. For the first year of the project, we worked together to get the works of our young writers translated into a third language also. So the three main writers that we publish each month, we worked with PEN centers all over the world to ensure publishing of our writers in 14 countries overall, enabling them to meet readers in their respective languages. So this worked by me reaching out to different PEN centers and asking them, would you be open to the idea of translating our young writers' works to your own language? With some of them, they were able to do it pro bono. With others, we also offered that we could pay for their translator if they had a translator. And we've worked with various PEN centers over the time that we've established ourselves. And this kind of led for our young writers to be published in all the websites of the PEN centers we collaborated with, and also additional avenues which were surprising to us, such as a literary magazine in Russia, a yearly anthology in Scotland with Scottish PEN, and the literary journal in Venezuela. And this allowed us to get to readers from 124 different countries, which was astonishing for us. This is really a great way to engage PEN International's global network and make youth acquainted and active within them. So that if you do start something like Young Literary Network in your country, I'm sure there are other audiences, not just in your country, but around the world, such as other PEN centers, who might be interested in, oh, what are young people saying in Cambodia? What are young people saying in Sri Lanka? Or so on and so forth. So this is very important for us to consider, that we can engage our network. And I firmly believe the same can be achieved by other centers if they want to initiate similar projects. And now I want to talk to you a bit about how we have structured the website so that it intended to capture the attention and imagination of young writers and audiences. We publish 3 main writers per month as our main function, so that we can get it translated to a third language if possible, although during COVID circumstances, this hasn't been very possible to engage the centers on a third language. So recently we haven't been able to do it as efficiently, but that's the main section that is intended to feature and shine the spotlight on 3 main writers who we think were the most qualified out of the submissions we got. Underneath that, we have a section called 15 minus. This is a section we intended to make space for the imagination of writers under the age of 15. We don't get to read these people often, and also I've discovered that there's such an intrigue in their older peers to also read about what children were writing and children are writing at a younger age. And you can see very innocent stories of things that perhaps we have lost an attention of as we grew older, such as, snowmen and swings and the secret letters written in class. Very for a writer under the age of 15 to feel like they have been published and to feel like they are in a peers, right? And another section we have is human portraits. This is very much inspired on the Humans of New York page, which some of you might know about. But the idea is that we shed a light on daily lives we tend to pass by often in a hurry and share their insights through photos and very short interviews of whatever they would like to tell us. And we found that this is interesting context for young audiences. There's also a reading suggestions section, which is another way to engage PEN International's networks. Actually, we share 5 books suggested to young writers by older writers, leading authors, you might say, in Turkey and around the world. So from Matida to Muratan Mungan, so many people have kind of responded to our request to say, would you want to suggest 5 books for young people to read? And they often give a sentence-long description of why they think they should read this book. And we also have a section called İlkyaz Young, which is sadly not in English, but it shares the first writings of famous authors. So, for example, just recently we did Pablo Neruda. Before that, we did Edgar Allan Poe, and we just kind of look at the giants in the literary industry and look at the first writings they have written and how they got inspired for them, sharing a bit of their stories. Then we have Literature Plus, which is what I mentioned in the beginning of literature changing form and collaborating with many other forms of expression. This section invites artists to produce works inspired by İlkyaz's writings, so the writings on our website, to expand their reach into each other's form. So for example, if there was a sculpturist who made a sculpture for a short story, there was a person who designed a t-shirt based on one of the stories, and you can all see this in this section. And we pay the writer and the artist a fee to work together to produce something. And this, I think, is very important to create an innovative space for young literature, and so that they may also learn from each other's approach to expression. And video poems are actually next on our list, which is hard to do because it's so expensive and we might obviously need to find extra funding for it, but it's a great innovative merger of audiovisual form and a good remedy for one of the critical threats to literature with shortening attention spans. It really brings out the literary element a lot more. And lastly, the 5 Faces section. It aimed to reflect the realities surrounding us all through young literature with 500 word pieces from 5 young writers on the same topic. And this was basically intended as a collaborative writing project, whereby we asked 5 writers in different parts of Turkey and get them to write about the same thing, such as a corner shop, such as a stove. And we wanted to kind of discover the things that connect us, but then also to see how these different young writers approached the same reality and perhaps to establish a connection thereby. We also have a blog related to, but not limited to, literature content, meant to be interesting for a younger audience, articles, short films, writing advice, etc. And we have, lastly, a collaborative music playlist on Spotify, which means that it's also in the bottom of our webpage that any writer or any follower of our website can go in and contribute their songs on this collaborative list. So in the 2 years, İlkyaz has actually changed a lot. And I want to tell you a little bit about how it's changed and the success stories of change we've had along the way. When we started, I was actually in doubt that we would be able to find so many young writers. I think the first month we had to reach out to writers. Second, we got around 20 or 30 submissions. But we carried on and it grew and it grew. We collaborated with and advertised in fanzines, online literary websites, and publishers to make our project heard. And we found that they were all really interested in this community of young literature. In a sense, nobody has approached it directly, as we're just working with young writers, and that's it. Everybody had their own niches and their own little groups. But once they noticed that this was for the good of all of them, so that all of them might meet more young writers, then they started collaborating with us ever more, suggesting young writers to us. We visited and reached out to schools and teachers, especially for the 15- section, and asked them to inform and encourage their students to send their writings to us. This was also received really well, and excitedly, we still get submissions from teachers of their students. And we were active on social media, and thanks to all these avenues, and of course, PEN International and its centers networks that we collaborated with, the responses we get now were totally unimaginable at the start. In 1 year, in nearly 2 years of life now, İlkyaz published 98 young writers, ranging from under 15 up to 35. We translated 70 of our writers to English and 50 of them to a third language via these international collaborations with other PEN centers that we talked about. We also managed to increase our readership to over 5K a month on average, reaching out to readers from 124 countries. Just last May, we received a record 1,028 submissions, which we could have never imagined at the start when we only got 20 in the first month. So the more people hear about this kind of network, the more interested they become, and the more other literary websites mention us, the more writers that go on them send their pieces to us. So this just goes to show how quickly such a project can grow, even if in the beginning you're a little unsure about how to find young writers in your country. Also, we got very inspiring replies as stories of change. We wanted to basically work our way into personally introducing these writers through Facebook groups, through events, which during Corona we haven't been able to do. So we're focusing on an online network so that maybe on a Facebook group they can meet each other. And this is important for setting up the future of the literary industry in the country. Some of the ways in which this kind of project changes young writers, I just want to give you a few examples. Nur Akpınar, for example, he was our young writer that we published a short story of, and she was discovered by a publisher on our website, and she let us know happily that she got a deal for turning the character to a lead character in a novel that she is now working on writing, and the publishing house may be interested in publishing, and this was really happy for us to hear that somebody actually got noted from our website. Another under 15-year-old writer, Nilsu Kaçmaz's piece about a piece of paper that she wrote in and that she kind of secretly passed around in a classroom, went viral because it was liked so much. And so many comments came through, over 80,000 interactions on Twitter came through. With good wishes, so many tweets underneath wishing Nilsu, please never quit writing. You will be an amazing writer someday, I can tell. And these sorts of encouraging messages, which was great for someone who's under 15 to realize, and we've obviously let her know of these interactions. And as a last example, there was one of our main writers, Farabi Orhan, who was just getting ready to serve his military service when he submitted his writing to us. And his biography read that he was born in Aydın, 1993. And although he studied German studies and archaeology, he never completed his education. He earned his living by taxi driving, watering, conducting polls, sales representation. He's been keeping a diary since 8 years of age and has kept an interest in literature for many long years. We learned that this was his first publishing opportunity. And to us, this was elating news, as it was exactly what we had aimed to facilitate. And his response to us read that, as of today, I saw my pieces published, and I'm very honored by this. It became a major motivation source for me to write new articles and share what I'm writing. The honorarium that was paid into my account today also became a light of hope for me that one day I can learn my living by being a writer. I thank all of you immensely. And this really moved us. And actually, these personals of stories of change are really at the core of why we set off launching İlkyaz, because you must understand that, especially in a context as tense and stressed as Turkey's, the youth is experiencing a mass demoralization in a sense, and they're struggling to find aspirations, to jobs, or to find non-judgmental communities to express themselves freely and to find hope, essentially, as well. And a small act of publishing or a small act of setting up a network where they can be present with what they are proud of doing can provide this essential hook for a young writer to keep up that hope, to find the community, and to pave a way to a greater sense of self-value too. And this is very important. So far, İlkyaz has inspired some other centers as well to think about developing their own networks, such as Belarusian PEN. And I've had discussions with German PEN about this to see if we could set it up in Germany too. And this goes to prove that the needs and solutions İlkyaz addresses and offers are far from Turkey specific. And we will invite English PEN in a moment to provide other examples of how their wonderful student PENs initiative and future plans for engaging the youth has gone. But just before we do, I would just like to open up the floor for any questions you might have for the first section.
Anyone who wants to ask something? Don't be shy. Okay. So if there are no questions, again,
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Maybe I may have missed it, but have you experienced challenges since this was initiated, and how did you overcome them?
Sure.
How did you solve the challenges?
So I actually didn't talk about it, so thank you for asking this. We have found some certain things difficult. Perhaps one of the things we found was that this translation with a third pen center, it went really well up until the first year, and we have reached 14 different countries to do this. But then we had capacity issues with pen centers as much as the COVID pandemic hit. So a lot of the centers were actually struggling to maintain their own offices, their own workloads. So that was one challenge that we didn't necessarily overcome it. I'm actually still pretty sad that for the last few months we haven't been able to fulfill that promise of translating our writers to a third language. But we tried to remedy it with thinking, okay, let's set up more individual creative writing collaborations with the centers, so that, for example, with English PEN or with other centers who have young writers on their board, we can try to write together, such as the Five Faces section. We did Turkish writers write 500 words on the same issue, and then English writers can write 500 words on the same issue. So we're just still actually in the process of trying to develop other ways in which we can engage pen centers, not directly with translations. Another thing is that finding funding was really difficult because, as you all know, civil society project, at some point you have to grow your own network and you have to grow your own funds and make funding applications. So this was a bit challenging for this year, because this year was our time that we had to find more funding on our own, and we made applications, but due to the state of the economy in Turkey and due to the state of COVID, I guess a lot of different NGOs and the like were making these applications. So we still have not managed to find our own funding, but thankfully this year, because of COVID, there was a decision in the civil society project to help support the current running projects a little longer. So this helps us. But how we intend to remedy this is that we would like to make a lot more applications outside of Turkey to see if we can be supported, not just inside, and to make them a lot earlier also, because a lot of the applications, such as UNESCO's application, was already closed by the time that we wanted to apply to them. So it's a good idea to think way in advance about how you can fund yourself further after PAN support ends.
Wow, thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Yeah, may I ask a question?
Please.
Yes. Yeah. Is it possible if we would like to work with some other pen centers for the young writers or for the young pen members like this?
Yes, I think so. I think it would be. I think basically you would have to reach out to them and ask how you would like to collaborate with them. And I personally feel that if you have young members in PEN Bangladesh who would be interested in their own initiative, if they wanted to think about, okay, here's the project we want to do, you can first engage them and ask, what do you think young people want to hear or read about? And then if they have a project, then you can perhaps approach English PEN, or you can approach İlkyaz, us in Turkey, and you can say, hey, we have these writers who are interested in doing something. Can we do something? What should we do? Or if you have a direct idea, if, for example, the young members of yours say, no, we want to do exactly this, then maybe you can approach with that idea and see if the other center is interested. But I think this is exactly how this should be carried on, by collaborating.
May I share what we are doing now with the PEN, young PEN members now or later or now?
Yeah. This will be recorded, I guess, so you can definitely share all of it, that it helps.
Yeah. In the civil society project now, we are engaging our young writers, PEN members, arranging a nationwide short story writing and a poem competition.
Oh, great. That's great.
Both for under 15 to 35 ages.
Awesome.
Okay, it's amazingly we got received about 500 short stories and poem together.
Amazing.
And it's amazing for us because we announced the program in the early September, and the last date was submitting date was 10th November.
Amazing.
Okay. And by this time, we received about 500 short stories and poem from all over the country, even in the city to rural areas even. Many students, many are the college and university students are there, and many have just completed their studentship. Okay. They just written and sent us to us, and we are going to publish. We announced the result. We would like to award 2 persons, one for a short story and another one for a poem. Okay, poetry. Then we would like to publish a compilation of selected short stories and poem among the participants.
That's so great.
And would like to distribute to the young writers, young members who are selected, who got the prize, and would like to give them money and books from the renowned writers and well-known writers of the home and abroad.
That's great.
We
you
are
can look to get them translated too, I guess.
We have a plan to translate it into English even.
That's great. So if you do that, we could also publish it in our network, as İlkyaz and other centers might be interested. And also you should have a meeting with them, maybe, just like actually.
But as it is pandemic now, we are just receiving all the short stories and poem over email. Okay, we will publish our result in our Facebook pages, Pen Bangladesh Facebook page, and we will declare the award in the what should I say, YouTube event. We would like to conversate with them who own the prizes, and we will award them in a program.
I see.
We'll celebrate the program. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great initiative.
Yeah. So, and we have a plan to work with the other countries together.
And
with the young writers.
Sorry to interrupt you, Mohammed. I mean, we will have a time later to actually share all these experiences.
Yeah.
So maybe let's see if someone else have a specific question to Ege about this project, and otherwise let's continue because we're running a bit out of time.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to share later some more issues in regarding this issue.
Yeah, that would be great. We'll have a discussion section where I'm sure this idea will be inspiring to others as well to engage the youth. Competitions is something we didn't do, but it's very important. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yes, and you can also type in the chat because we will be collecting all the information you tell us, and we'll put it in on a common document that you will see later. So now I would like to introduce you to Hannah Trivandhen. Sorry if I misspell it, from English Pen. And she's gonna tell us about her experience with engaging the youth in universities and other experiences.
Hi everybody, thank you so much to Maria and Ege for inviting me to speak at this webinar. It's really wonderful to connect to kind of pen centres around the world and really feel part of our kind of the pen movement and hear what you're all doing. Thank you, Ege, for sharing your experiences with İlkyaz. It's really inspiring. I'm going to talk briefly about what we do at English Pen, and I'll first sort of speak kind of generally about our membership, and then I'm going to talk about some very sort of specific examples as well, and then there'll be time for questions as well. But as Maria said, if there are questions, please do pop them in the chat when they pop into your head, and then we can get to them at the end of my little section. So yes, English Pen, like all of you, we're a membership organisation. But I think kind of to start with, I think what has been really helpful for us when we think about engaging a more kind of a broader group of people is that we have no stipulations to become a member of Pen, so of English Pen. So to join English Pen, you can be a writer, you can be an editor, you can be a lawyer. You just have to be committed to our work or want to support our work. So you don't have to be a published writer. So in terms of kind of as a baseline, there are no perceived barriers to membership in terms of publication. So that's been really helpful for us, I think, in thinking about who can join Pen, and they can support us through a number of different ways. They might join us because they care about the work that we do about writers at risk. They may be more interested in our translation work, or they may be more engaged with the work that we do around literature and events. And we this summer introduced a concessionary membership, so a slightly kind of discounted rate in August to open up our membership to people who perhaps are on a lower income, they're students, to be able to be part of our community. And I should say, since we've introduced that membership in the summer, we've had 50 new members because of this new policy. I think it's also worth saying when I'm talking, I know specifically that this session is about young writers, but when we at English Pen, when we think about young writers as well, we also think about early career writers. So I think it's all safe to say that you might not come to writing until later on in life, and so we think sometimes when we as an organization talk about young writers, we also talk about early career writers, so people who are earlier on in their career who might have started writing slightly later on in their life. And ways that we've kind of engaged kind of directly with different members of our community. I'm going to run through those now. So as Ege mentioned earlier, English Pen for over 10 years has had what we call a student pen network. So they are student-led centres set up within universities by students. I should say they're quite dormant at the moment. There are kind of peaks and troughs of activity with those. It very much depends on the university and the students there. And as you might expect, you know, people might only have 3 or 4 years at university and then they go away, and people kind of, the people who are running it change hands. So it's not perfect, but it has meant that we have reached a kind of broad range of younger people and had some real success in those. So for example, the person who founded the Pen Centre in King's College London here, she is now a kind of well-regarded writer who's published 3 books, an academic. The young woman who founded York Student Pen is now a well-established translator and writing a PhD. Other members of Student Pen have gone on to become counsellors, kind of, you know, taken a more sort of political, kind of more campaigning route, and others have become very much more involved in advocacy. And for us, they're sort of real success stories that, you know, the work with Pen, and they say this to us, meant that they were able to go on and do other work. And I think, as Ege said, if you can support writers at that stage, they continue to engage with your work. We, in terms of our events and programming, which is what I specifically do at English Pen, is I think very carefully about the writers that we are working with and programming. So we may work with event partners who are magazines for younger writers. We did an event a couple of years ago with a literary magazine, and that featured a number of writers who have then gone on to win prestigious awards in the UK, or in one case, one of them was shortlisted for the Booker Prize. So I think in terms of thinking about writers and kind of engaging with them, that there are lots of different ways you can do it, and that brings in, you're supporting those younger writers, but you're also bringing in younger audiences who are then exposed to what you do within your Pen Centre. Another specific example is that we work with a poet here called Stephen Filer on something called the Pen Modern Literature Festival, and that is a way which brings together the literary work that we do, but also our campaigning work. So Stephen kind of recruits, as it were, 10 kind of early career poets to write work in response to our current kind of writers at risk. So they write a new piece, a new work, which is inspired by the work of writers at risk, and that has actually led to some long-standing relationships between those poets and the writers that we campaign for. So in thinking holistically of how we engage writers, it's not just about the work that they're producing, but engaging with our mission. We have a platform which is called Pen Transmissions, which actually Ege is written for, where we platform a kind of diverse range of voices from around the world, and some of them have kind of had agents and publishers contact them from that, and we also very much believe that we pay people for their work as well, so supporting them through kind of monetary means as well. A couple of other examples, because I know I don't have lots of time, but we also run an outreach program. Well, we have run an outreach program here in England, specifically in London, but also kind of more outside of the city, which has been called Brave New Voices, and we've worked specifically with young refugees and asylum seekers to create new work specifically poetry, which we've then published in anthologies. So allowing those young people the creative space to make work, to think about themselves as a poet or a writer, and actually with those workshops, we work with and they're facilitated by younger poets and facilitators based here. So the kind of, in terms of connecting them with people who are actively creating work and are published, and actually some of those poets that we've worked with to facilitate those workshops have then again gone on to kind of be award-winning poets or shortlisted for them. In fact, one of them, somebody that we work with, they've just written a new TV show for the BBC. So I think when we think about English Pen and our networks, it's about connecting people in lots of different ways, and you know, they feel very warmly towards us because we supported them or gave them work early on in their career, but they also believe very strongly in encouraging other young people to create new work. And I should say that some of the young refugees and asylum seekers that we have worked with, some of them have actually gone on to continue to write poetry and then come on to be facilitators for those types of work. So it's a real sort of investment in the ecosystem, I suppose, of kind of the literary and literature community of which Pen is a small part. As Ege mentioned, I was completely astounded to discover the Tomorrow Club, which he has so kind of eloquently described to you. But I'd like to sort of use it as an example of how now English Pen is thinking about our youth engagement. So as we all know, next year is the kind of centenary of the founding of the Pen movement, and as part of that and English Pen's centenary activity, we're working to revive the Tomorrow Club for the 21st century. So looking at what that might look like in England, and how we can connect young writers, activists, translators, editors together in a peer-to-peer network. So to support each other, share experiences, think about the kind of literature community as a whole. It's not just writers, it is translators, editors, journalists. We're all kind of connected, and how they can support our work. This very much came out of a round table that we had with our sort of youth beneficiaries. We had a round table and we talked about the Pen Charter, and we said, well, what does the Pen Charter mean to you now? What is of interest to you as young people, young writers? How is it relevant to you? And that very much has shaped the ideas that we've taken forward for the Tomorrow Club, but also our work that we're doing across England with our centenary program. So I would say as well, it's kind of, as Ege has really kind of mentioned as well, for us it's been kind of really integral to our work to actually listen to the needs of our younger writers. I think whilst I appreciate I am relatively young, I'm like in my 30s now, and what is of interest to the younger generation is wildly different from me. And so it's been a real sort of learning experience to listen to them and how they want to engage with our work. And I would say increasingly, and a lot of it is about the online space and how people can navigate that. Particularly, we're going to be looking at ideas of mutual respect in a day and age when there's lots of online harassment. I think that's something that our younger members feel quite strongly about. So we'll be looking at that. And finally, just two other points I'd like to talk about is during the kind of COVID, well, the emergence of COVID, we're still very much in it. I founded a peer-to-peer group for literary programmers, so people who are creating events and festivals in the UK. And that's been really useful to see how people can connect using online tools like Zoom and Slack, and how often we can connect with our peers from around the world, very much like what we're doing now, but how we can share experiences and listen to one another and learn and grow. And they often are younger people as well. So that's been a real kind of valuable resource in terms of Penn, connecting with the wider community, artistic community, cultural community here in England. And also, I think talking about how you reach those audiences. I don't think, by no means I would say that we are successful all of the time. I think it's definitely an area of growth, and I think specifically in the UK there are lots of organizations who are looking at this, but for us, you know, we find that using social media actually is really helpful in connecting with specific audiences. So we're extremely active on Twitter, but that's not necessarily kind of where young people are kind of always engaging. But we have, you know, started an Instagram account, which is much more visual, and kind of we're getting a slightly different demographic of people engaging with our work, organizing and looking at what we're doing on Instagram. But I realized that like not everybody has the capacity for this, and I should say, you know, we're a relatively big centre. You know, we are 8 members of staff, and we're able to kind of deliver some of this, and we're very lucky to be funded for this as well. But I hope that that's kind of given a little bit of insight into our thinking, how we as English Penn are thinking about youth engagement, but it continues to evolve and will do, especially next year as well. Sorry, I've just lost my trail of thought there. Really sorry. Any questions? That's what I was going to say.
I think someone raised their hand there.
Yes. Yes, Folu. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much for that presentation. I want to know that in your engagement with the young writers, especially students, do you actually incorporate them into your center of Penn for them to be regarded as members, or do you have categories of membership, like maybe associate membership or full membership and so on? And then that might also have to do with their financial commitment. So if you take them in as full members, are they also meant to also have a financial obligation as the older members of the center?
Good, like really, really good question, and actually something that we thought a lot about. So the student Penn members, I suppose the way to think about it, we thought about it, is that those centres were autonomous from us. So we worked with them directly, and they were very much kind of set up within those universities, but they weren't sort of kind of paid up members of English Penn, that they were doing their own work. They were engaging with specific things. So sometimes centres were more interested in campaigning or poetry. So we very much sort of left them to do that, but we provided resources to them. But we did have we used to, although it's changed now to this concessionary membership, we did used to have a £10 student membership. But that wasn't actually very successful, which I think is notable. And they were more engaged in what they were doing within the university. But then when they left university, they sort of may then have become sort of full members of Penn. So they were, I guess you would say, like adjacent to our kind of regular membership, kind of full membership, and then but we would integrate them in gatherings that we had with our full membership. So we have a Christmas party, and we used to do a big sort of summer gathering. So we would invite them to come to particular moments and meet our kind of broader membership as well. So I suppose it was more important for them to be connecting and networking with our more established members as well. It wasn't necessarily that we wanted them to contribute financially. It was more thinking about longevity, and if they're engaging with our work when they're 18, 19, 20, they then may continue to support us. So I think sometimes when you're thinking about younger members, that you have to think about it long term, that engaging them through campaigns or whatever they're doing, they then eventually kind of join up and pay to become a member. But there's no sort of like quick solution, and I don't think actually that is kind of unique kind of with us as a centre.
Follow, do you have another question, right?
No. I'm satisfied. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else before we're going into the second presentation?
So I have a sort of comment more. Yes. So we in Penn. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. So in Penn Bosnia, well, they have a strict policy regarding the membership, and you do have to be a published writer and so on. But the new board has come up with a sort of strategy to publish young writers on our webpage, or a lot of our members have their own web pages, so they publish the authors there. And yes, of course, when we would ask young writers to send us their stories, texts, and all, they were sort of dormant at times. So what we did is actually let them publish on other websites, and we have, well, this year, we developed a network of our members and literature students who were writing literary reviews, or actually that was sometimes a review, sometimes it was like an academic literary critic. So that's what we have focused on lately. Well, at least in Bosnia, we have a lack of literary criticism and not a lack of young writers writing. So that was kind of important for us. I just wanted to share this. Thank you.
Thanks, Anika.
I'm just to say, I'm going to put my my email in the group chat, because I sadly can't stay for the full session. We have a big event this evening, online event that I am coordinating. So I'm going to probably stay for another 20 minutes, and then I'm kind of have to go. So I want to use this opportunity to say how wonderful it is to be able to sort of meet you all across the internet, as it were, and kind of hear kind of the experiences of your centres. If you want to email me or kind of continue the conversation, or you have questions at a later date, then please do just email me, and I can perhaps put you in touch with relevant people in English Pen who might be able to talk more specifically about kind of our editorial work and publishing as well. So please do to do that. I'll just pop that in now.
Hannah, I will share also your email with the rest of the centers who were supposed to come to the webinar, so that they can also reach out to you.
It's also in the last slide, I think, in the contact section. So if by that time they join, they can also see it there.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Hannah. That was great.
Yes, thank you very much. I hope it goes well in the event.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, Pen, I will pen. Pen. Ege, I'm gonna share my screen so you can continue with your presentation.
Okay, great.
Mm.
So yeah, of course, our second case study is creative witnesses. Our youth engagement doesn't always need to be or can be non-political, like İlkyaz was. So another way we've attempted to engage the youth and make our campaigning more dynamic and creative was a format that I founded called Creative Witnesses. The idea was simple: to organize artists to create original pieces of work in response to and in solidarity with ongoing dire free expression cases at risk, being our PEN cases that we campaign for. It was intended to raise awareness, aid their campaigns, and inspire others to take action. You can watch the first episode of our Creative Witnesses on PEN International's YouTube channel. The idea really came from the writers that we stand for are among the best witnesses to their societies and communities, and we know this, and their words ring timelessly true and moving in reflecting the reality in sometimes extreme contexts. And they take immense risks to defend the rights to free expression. As stands, our job as PEN is to support them and their rights to free expression when they are silenced, and make their names, their words, and stories louder and raise awareness. So collaborating with other forms of expression, that being other artists, is a great way to be able to do that. Not just to engage young artists and audiences, but beyond, to unite human rights with the arts. And a lot of the arts is also very much based on literature or inspired by literature. So this collaboration really allows for a much louder voice to come out of the cases that we are campaigning for, or deliver them to much more diverse range of listeners and audiences. So the format and structure of this event was to record 3 one-hour-long productions, each one focused on a different region PEN operates in, namely Europe and MENA region, Asia Pacific region, and Latin America region. And we've so far only shot the first one, produced the first one. Each event addresses 3 cases PEN campaigns for, and allocates each case to an artist from a different form of expression, asking them to show solidarity and respond creatively, with informing the audience on their current details of their condition, of their prosecution. Then basically audience is consistently presented with direct ways to take action that PEN has researched. So in whatever's in our statements kind of comes up as subtitles during the performances, leading the audience to the video description where there's related links to see how directly an audience can get inspired by it or can just move to take action on the case. I consulted our regional coordinators to select the 3 main cases. As you can see, we've also incorporated some PEN campaigning actions such as empty chairs and readings. We then selected the artists to take action, paid the artists per piece, and they had a month to prepare. Then we booked a studio to record all the performances. Each case was explained in detail with PEN's information before the performance, and we basically also invited them to donate to PEN so we can carry our work. So I wanted to show you an example of how this all worked out. In two of our friends, Adam Beatty and Fiona Bevan, just produced a song to Abdul Wahhab's lyrics. Abdul Wahhab was a very important case who sadly, tragically, died on a voyage to claim asylum, and in a boat that sank. He lost his life, sadly, and he was writing about his journey beforehand. And Adil Ibrahim from Arab Lit discovered his writings, and this was a shock to us and to them as well, who were really moved by the story. And we really wanted his words to live on and to gain a second life, perhaps, with music. And so Adam and Fiona wrote this beautiful song to his lyrics. And this shows how the power of the words get greatly amplified with the power of the music. Let's take a listen so you can see what the result was.
Oui. Can you see? It says like the video is not available.
Maybe just type in Creative Witnesses Europe.
Yes, let's see.
Scared for her son.
Sorry,
Was it 15?
Their experience. We have two fantastic singer-songwriters, very acclaimed in the folk scene, Adam Beatty and Fiona Bevan. They are live in Red Velvet Studios, and they have composed their own creation, their own song for the story of Abdel Wahab Yusuf.
Hi everyone, I'm Fiona Bevan.
My name's Adam Beatty. We're both singer-songwriters, and we'd like to thank Penn International for allowing us the opportunity to write this song.
We've written the song based on the lyrics and life of Abdel Wahab Yusuf, a poet also known as Latinos, who recently died trying to cross the Mediterranean Sea.
Yeah, we've been reading and rereading these two poems that he wrote in the final moments of his life, which really sound like predictions of his death. He knew he was going to die on that voyage, and he did, along with 45 other people on that boat.
Our song is called Scare Away the Darkness, which is one of the lines from one of these last two poems he ever wrote.
Pen rolls off the page. The hands have stopped on the clock tower. The sky is in a rage. The words are all underwater. The son of someone just like you. What would you want him to do? The dog's chained up at the port. Tears fall off the paper. Night is swallowed by dawn. I'll finish this verse later. The brother of someone just like you. What would you want him to do? You want him to do?
I'm calling you to my embrace. Let me hold you to my breast. I will wash the dirt of mystery from your soul. Scare away the darkness.
Rocked by the roar of the waves, holding the hand of a stranger, dreaming of sun on the court, sharing a meal at the table, the mother of someone just like you. What in the world should she do? Brave men die at sea. Watch the parade in your finest dress. Where is the medal for me? Pin the seashell on my chest. I am someone just like you. What would you ask me to do?
but it happens again and again. I'm calling you in my embrace. Let me hold you to my breast. I will wash the dirt of misery from your soul, scare away the darkness from your soul, scare away the darkness.
Yeah. So that was their moving tribute to Abdel Wahab Yusuf, and it really shows how artists have this capacity to really move people and touch their audience, and they've developed this skill. And if they respond more to and more proactively to pressing current causes and problems rooted in our societies, they can come up with such works that moves us all. As a way of using this kind of format, I found out that it's a win-win for everyone involved by the end of the first production. And I wanted to detail some of the ways in which this is so. For cases, it really has the capacity to raise morale. It raises awareness. It creates content for the campaigns to use for the cases. It inspires and invites others to take action. For example, one of our main cases for the first event was İlhan Çomak, a Kurdish poet who has been imprisoned in Turkey for 26 years and counting. And through his brother, he got the message that a performance artist has enacted his poetry for the show. And in his message to us, he said, justice is not being forgotten, which I really was struck by. And perhaps that's one way to help. For PEN, it's innovated campaigning methods. It reached a larger audience, especially in the world of arts and emotionally engaged people. It was a useful way to fundraise and ask for donations as well. It's also perhaps, as opposed to statements, the statements give the information and the background necessary, but then it takes it a step further to emotionally engage the audience. So that's also very important for audiences that otherwise may ignore or may not care. And music especially also has an important role in the project because it's somehow, to me, a form of art, since its capacity to create that shift in consciousness that every form of expression strives for faster and more directly, while other forms like writing often require understanding a message before being able to be moved by it. With music, this effect can be instant and may require no such preparation. And also for the artists, it was a win-win because in a way, it resonated deeply with them. This practical offering of a way to connect with human rights was important to them, to find a sense of purpose in their creativity. Also, they embodied the cases somehow. They became them or their writings, and they were changed by them too. And it was the first time for some of our artists that they've participated in such a direct act of solidarity. And a lot of the responses we got was that it was enlightening and empowering for them to realize the real potential in their craft, to creatively engage with human rights and practically show solidarity with others who are not as lucky as them to have a right to free expression, to lend their voices to them in a way. And my collaborator for the project, Gabriel Moreno, said it actually helped him restore a purpose in his life, which was lacking, especially during COVID times and when personal troubles had taken it away. And on that note, I encourage all of you to take similar actions in organizing artists around you to respond to our cases who are being prosecuted creatively, and to offer them such a practical way to do so. Really, it's a win-win for everyone, for PEN, for cases, and for the artists. So yeah, if there's any questions, we can answer them, and then we will move to the discussion phase.
It doesn't seem that people have a question now, but maybe also you will be able to ask later, because we're now going into our plenary activity. So it will be much more interactive anyway. Yes. I'm gonna share with you, like, we have prepared a Miro board that is a page where you can see the questions we'll be discussing about in this plenary session for hopefully 30 minutes. And we will be writing in the board all your answers to the questions as we talk. So please either raise your hand and contribute by talking, or otherwise type your answers to the chat. Just making clear what is the question you are answering to. I'm gonna copy and paste also the questions here in the chat first of all, so that you can see. You can see them and read them, and then, but they will be also in the board that you will be seeing. Okay. Sorry. I'm trying to copy the questions. Sorry. That's strange. I'm gonna try to copy. I have two computers open.
Should I send it to you? Can I help?
Yes, or just paste them on the chat.
Okay.
Thank you. Don't worry, I have them here.
Okay. Cool.
So everyone. Would you like to read them before I change to the mirror?
Yeah. So the different questions to just get us all thinking about how we can do more to engage young writers is, what are we doing to engage young writers and audiences now? So to hear some of your ideas may inspire other members of our family, as we said. And we can also talk about, does your activities and policies, such as membership policy, make space for younger writers and members? English Pen talked a little bit about how this can be capable, but I wonder what you think. If not, what practical steps can be undertaken to improve this? Do you have any young members or affiliates who you can discuss this with, which is important? We can also talk about, are you including artists as part of your campaigns? Would you consider it, and how? And lastly, if you wanted to set up a young writers network like İlkyaz, or student pens like English Pen up in your country, how would you go about it? So how would you structure an idea to engage young writers? Would it be a fanzine, for example? Would it be a web-based platform, or something else that you might have in mind? Would it be political or non-political, or both? Just to get us thinking about such questions.
Great. Do you think we should go about answering one question by one question?
Yeah, I think that would be best. Yeah.
Great. So I'm sharing my screen now.
So yeah, to remind the first question, what are you doing to engage young writers and audiences now? I think Pam Bangladesh talked about it. Your short story competition and poetry competition with translations and publishing. That's a great way to engage and get to know more young writers, and perhaps they might get involved in Pen Bangladesh soon as well. Anyone else who wants to share what they're doing with young writers to engage audiences now?
Where's Malawi here? I think
yes. Go ahead and talk a
January
bit louder, please.
Sorry?
Yes, now we can hear you well.
Oh, okay. I was saying, for this year, there isn't much that we have done, but we've engaged young people in competitions before, like short story writing. We would go to secondary schools and engage them, and also universities. But with universities, it was mainly on maybe literature reviews and just that talk on literary matters. So that's what we have been doing. But since January 2020, there isn't much that we have done, and we're exploring to do a bit more than just staying.
That's great. Were you able to stay in touch with some of these people that you've discovered in the process of story writing?
Yeah, actually, some of them are members now.
Oh, that's great. See,
Uh-huh.
that's really good. So perhaps you can also discuss with them, include them in your discussions of what you should do in the future to engage.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll do that.
Brilliant. I think William is raising his hand. Hello, William.
Yes, hello, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for...
Of course, thank you. Yeah, like Weza said, we are doing much. And in fact, during the secondary school project, they actually help us and help the students themselves to move from secondary level to college level. So it's like we are doing much. And like she said, most of them are members. Only that due to COVID-19, we haven't done much. We are very much hopeful that most of them are going to be members of PEN so that we move together. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Folu? That's also.
Yeah, thank you. We've been interacting with the young members of society. For instance, traditionally we have functions on university campuses, even colleges of education, having things like poetry festivals, and some other. But then this year, definitely this year is a bit special, and so we've not been able to reach out. But then what we have done this year is to create a platform, a WhatsApp platform involving established writers and then the young ones. So we just threw it open to everybody who has any literary interest to come on board. Even if you are not a member of PEN yet, just come. It's open to everybody, and then we do a lot of. We actually tagged it free the world. PEN Nigeria free the world. Free the world. So everybody is involved, and everybody has been writing poetry, short stories, and all that, and for criticism. And that's one way. That's one way by which we've been trying to get the young ones involved in our activities. And then a lot of them are really very enthusiastic about it. And then we, in the anthology, because we are trying to publish a particular an anthology this year, and we have also not restricted the entries to members of PEN Nigeria. So we also threw it open, especially to the young ones. And we have a lot of entries, contributions by young people who are really, who might not necessarily be members of PEN Nigeria, but a lot of them are there. And there's so many of them. We're hoping that very soon we're going to bring the anthology out, and then we'll have, so those are some of the things we've been doing to bring the young ones out. We normally reach out, we go out to schools to stage our events, the World Poetry Day, or various things. But then this year we have restricted our activities online, to webinars, and then we've been trying hard to keep reaching out to young ones.
That's great. That's a lot. Thank you.
Lamilla, do you want to add?
Yes, so a few years back we did have these creating writing workshops, but since then we have not engaged in such activities. But what we have done is focused more on literary criticism, as I have said before. So we gather students and young literary critics. What that has produced is actually getting feedback from authors, mainly young authors who read the critics and so on. And what we will do at the end of this year and in the next is a series of interviews with those authors, which will be published on our website. So we have both sides, the authors and the critics, coming together in a dialogue. Also,
Lamija, there are young authors and young critics?
Yes. So the youngest critic we have is 22 years old, I think. So
how do you facilitate? I'm sorry. How do you facilitate the interaction between the critics and the writers?
So we gathered the critics, and in the last 4 months, well, until the end of December, we will have 45 reviews published, that from about 20 to 25 critics. And so we contacted them to and gave them a book, which was published to a maximum of 3 years ago. And we also, like, half of those books are written by young writers. So and as we publish them on our website, and also we have an Instagram account, many of those authors whose books were written about saw them and read them and reached out to us, actually thanking us, even if there were some negative reviews, but they were actually happy to be written about, because we do have a lack of literary criticism, as I told you. So so these authors, we will have a series of interviews with them, either on Zoom or in a transcript format on our website. Also, our website is open to all stories, and so every time a young author sends us his story or poetry or etc., we tend to publish it, but it's not so common. That's all.
Thank you.
Abdullah?
Yeah, thank you. What should I say? As a relatively young funder, we haven't done much. So, but there is one thing that I think it is worth mentioning. First of all, let me tell you that we are, let's say, a society where morality is one of the outstanding characteristics. So, we can say that any Guinean is a kind of storyteller, mostly in the rural area. So what we decided to do to get more people engaged is to organize a national, how should I call it, competition for traditional tales. Meaning, more specifically, that we invited a lot of young people to listen to their relatives, to the senior citizens, and let them tell them, their stories, traditional stories. So, and then they record it, and then they do the transcriptions, and then submit it for this national contest. What we want is to get as many people, young people involved as possible, in the urban and rural areas, and at the end, by publishing selecting and later publish the best tales, have these young people, mostly students, gain the status of writers because they will be co-authors of the book on traditional tales. So the main purpose is to do something to make the book more present in people's life, in young people's life, and to get them more involved in reading, and therefore gain their sympathy towards our pen center. So basically, this is what we have done so far in our first year of existence. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you.
Tom Him, would you like to share whether you did something with to engage young people in the past or this year? Is he still with us? Maybe he's left us.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, so then, yes. Sorry, Mohammed, go ahead.
Yeah. I would like to add one more thing. Okay, what we are doing here is that before the pandemic, we just had some storytelling program with the young school students. Okay, it's very much interesting, and we have some workshops for translation and poetry reciting programs for youngs. And the storytelling program is very interesting because you see a famous writer, we have many famous writers in our country, nationally and internationally, and we honored a guest speaker or a storyteller just to take to the schools, and he will start a short story of his own or of her own. Then there are the 10 contestants among the students. Okay, among the contestants, after completing his, not completing, before completing his or her, the writer's story, he just stopped in one place. In any time he stopped, and the contestants start the story, run together. Everybody get only 3 minutes. Then he stopped. Then another contestant start the story of his own. Okay, this is the storytelling just to increase the creativity of the students for the young writers. Okay, we just continue it before the pandemic. As it is pandemic here, all the schools and the colleges are closed. Because of that, we stopped the program.
Good. There is a hand raised, follow, but the thing is we have 10 minutes to go through all the board, and we have 10 minutes left and 3 more questions. So I think we should move on because we don't want to miss someone because on the way. So let's move on to this one.
And yeah, basically, does your activities and policies that should make space for young writers? I think we've answered that in what ways as well. We've kind of approached it. So what other ways do you think you can improve on this experience? That's what we wanted to kind of get you to think about. For example, English Pen has this concessionary membership, which allows for younger and non-writers perhaps to get involved. Would you consider such things? Or do you have any future ideas as in to improve young youth engagement? And do you have young members you can discuss this with?
Anyone would like to start? Follow?
Yeah, at Pen Nigeria, we have categories of membership. We have we have PEN on some university campuses, really. But apart from that, we also have associate membership. That's for people who want to really join PEN, but they are not maybe old enough or really established, and so we just make them pay a token and then take them in as members. And when they are mature enough and ready, we assimilate them into the fold. And then we are, as I said, we're trying to open up the space to accommodate more young people. And so whatever we do, we really have them at the forefront. We, in the past 4 months now, we'll be having monthly webinars when we do workshops, inviting university lecturers and some established writers to come and engage with young ones to teach them how to write, starting from scratch. So those are some of the ways in which we've been engaging the youth, and then so it's really catching on among them now that they know that PEN Nigeria, PEN actually is not exclusive and not really restricted, just to the established writers.
Thank you. So I guess there is a lot from our members who are attending in the previous question also that they've identified different ways in which young writers have taken active approaches, and they have all made space. So perhaps we can move along to the next question, unless anyone else has anything else to add.
No?
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
And then if you were thinking about setting up a young writers network like İlkyaz in your country, how would you go about it? So I just wonder what you think the needs of young writers in your countries are, and perhaps how would you approach a grouping of them? Would you, for example, if you had the means, do a fanzine, or if you were fundraising, would you think about a web-based platform for them to publish like İlkyaz? Would you make it political or non-political, or both? Yeah.
So we have like in Bosnia a whole network of self-published young authors who are basically selling their books on the street to people because they couldn't get a publisher. So I have a friend who published 5 books that way. It's horror fiction, and he's still doing it. So I think PEN could open up to young writers in that way to either publish their books or to connect self-published young authors, and also publish them on the digital platforms we have available.
Yeah. So do you think you would make it political, this kind of writing, or would you put any barriers on it being political or not political? Would that be an importance?
Yeah, while you were talking, I noticed that you have you are aiming for unpolitical fictional texts. I think that yeah, we would stick to the PEN Charter and make it as unpolitical as possible. But mostly in our country, as I know, young writers do write like science fiction or speculative fiction and so on. So it's always kind of socially active, but maybe in a non-direct way. So it wouldn't be like pro any ideology, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, obviously literature can be political, but it could also be about a white rat or a black rat instead of Erdogan and opposition or whatnot. So this is very important for us to have a channel of communication then, as you said, an expression of ideology. So that's great. Thank you.
May I please?
Sure. Please.
You know, we have already Young Writers Network in PEN Bangladesh. and it's non-political because the present government published the Digital Security Act, and it's difficult for most of the time it is difficult for our part to write anything whatever you think in the social media, because it's if you most of the time if you write against the government or anything else, then it will be more problematic. Okay, and so most of the young writers write in the social media what they're thinking and what their ideology about it. But we people, it will be web-based, and also web-based platform, and also the physical one also.
So you mean, Mohammed, that you are thinking of expanding the like offline network of writers to a platform as well? Do you think that could?
Yeah, I think so. Offline and online also.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So it seems there is a bit of trend as well in just how the ideas of thinking how to unite young writers is already present in a lot of the centers, and it's, they're actively considering how this can be improved. So that's really great to see already that there's works underway. Perhaps then, if anybody else doesn't want to add anything, we can move into the last question.
Yes.
Does anyone have anything else to add to this section?
Yeah, like any ideas you had in the past, or something you were planning, or like anything you want to add, or?
Okay.
So you say that as Pen
Oh, sorry.
Hi,
going
Wesley.
forward. Hi. So at Pen Malawi, going forward, we're thinking of engaging the youth more, as William has put it. And he has talked of how we've started meeting for talks on literary matters, especially with the youths. Last time we had a literary talk was I think 2 weeks ago. We had one which was very successful, and we had about 7 young people. We had 7 young people participating, and so we are thinking of doing it in both ways. Physically, with physical, we meet physically, sit and discuss literary matters, and also online. We have not been digital since Spain was established. We haven't been digital, but we're thinking of now going digital. We create a website and maybe use Facebook. So I should just say social media platforms to just reach out to more youths and have their works published and stuff like that. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
And of course, even these little first-time steps, as you saw with Ilkyaz, as you saw with my example of just 5 years on, some of the young writers that you'll be meeting through Facebook, through one post of theirs, one poem that you publish in a couple of years, if you keep your connections with them, they will come back and they will improve your center and give you innovative ideas to carry on the work, hopefully themselves. So that's really great to hear.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, then last question, just because we're running out of time. I just wondered are you including artists as part of your campaigns? Would you consider this maybe a similar thing to Creative Witnesses, but for the ongoing prosecuted cases that you're campaigning for, would you consider including artists as part of your campaigns, and how would you do this? I mean, the answer could be no too, right? I mean, it's just an idea of whether artists are being used, and if they are, then how. It would be interesting to know.
Yes, we have artists in our pen members, and we just use when we make some programs, banners. You see the freedom of expression like these, or the International Mother Language Day, or Women's Day, or we celebrate writers in prison day, and most of the times we just use our artists just according to the theme of the programs. They just make the banner and or our books, and illustrated our books or short stories, poems like this. When we publish the journal, pen journal from Pen Bangladesh, we use our artist.
That's great. And if you have a prosecuted case, for example, somebody who's been prosecuted for their writing, not necessarily just in Bangladesh, but in other pen centers as well, if you get news of it, would you have other artists to, for example, write a song for their words, or shoot a video for their words? So that, would you consider this?
Yeah, definitely. You see, we condemn many times. When in other countries, and even also in our country, the journalists, writers, or you have heard the name of the photographer Shahidul Alam, who was arrested. Okay.
Yeah.
We condemn here.
Yeah. I see. Great. Thank you.
Folu, do you have your hand raised?
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Well, we also we have artists in our fold, in our mix as well, and we have all been engaging them. Some of them are performance poets, and then we also have musicians, and then we've been using them at our various events. But going forward, I think I'm really thinking of getting more popular artists, but that definitely might not come cheap, and that might be the only snag to it. But we have artists in our mix, and who have been coming around to entertain guests at some of our functions. Some doing performance poetry, some just singing, or stuff. Yeah.
That's great. I mean, if you ask them directly, that's what I found is like, this is a case or this is the information. Can you respond to this? Maybe a musician then feels like they have something to say as a response to a case. So you can directly ask them this as well, even if they're not very famous or well known. But if they are kind of coming to your events, showing an interest, then it might be a good idea to ask them to produce something creatively in response to a case you're campaigning for example, because the results can sometimes be very fruitful.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wants to contribute anything?
That's great, even if the idea is explored, to think, can artists be included?
So I guess this is the end, or do you want me to put the presentation again? Is there any final?
Yeah, I think there was just my email to put there. And just to wrap up, I guess, thank you all for joining. I think our communal effort to make more space for young voices can collectively strengthen youth representation, can bring dynamism to PEN's activities, can lay its foundations for its future. I hope this has been helpful to provide some ideas. It's been very helpful to me to learn about your experiences with young writers and see if there's any other avenues for us to connect, which it seems like very hopeful actually to see that so many of you are already very engaged with this issue of making the foundations for young writers and young members in your centers. And it's wonderful to hear so many different voices from all over the world to also engage like I do with their young writers and young members. And I'm here for you if you wanted to ask any questions or consult me on any advice I can give. You can write to me. There is my email, as well as Hannah's email from English Pen, who gave that wonderful presentation on their work. And I really hope that in the near future, next 100 years, to see more centers incorporate more young people into their structures, activities, its membership and administration can all get younger. And I hope İlkyaz and student pen networks and creative witnesses show a glimpse of how this can be initiated. I'm looking forward to seeing more of your projects coming through pen as well. So thank you all.